It was as Father Fabrice Lalique was driving home through the dark, misty night that he saw the car behind him again. Up until then, the 53-year-old priest had been reflecting on the hours he'd just spent with his parishioners Pierre and Madeleine Robichon in the nearby village of Briande, trying to quell the latest bitter dispute between the couple. It was his duty to minister to the social and family problems of his diocese, and God knew that the turbulent Robichons had more than their fair share of those. He'd eventually left them settled and in peace, hands clasped across the kitchen table, but the reconciliation had had to be painfully, exhaustingly coaxed out of them, and he'd been at it far longer than intended. The Volkswagen Passat's dashboard clock read almost 11. A heavy blanket of fog hung over the whole Tarn valley, and as Father Lalique headed back along the deserted country roads away from Millau, he had to blink and strain to see where he was going. He couldn't wait to get back to the warm, cosy little rural retreat on the edge of the village of Saint Christophe, where he'd lived alone these many years, pour himself a much-needed glass of Armagnac, and go to bed. A nip of brandy might help him forget his own problems and the worry that had been haunting him for the last several days. Fabrice sighed. It was probably just a figment of his imagination. Maybe the responsibility of his job was getting to him at last. Perhaps Dr. Bachelard's advice about early retirement was worth taking after all. When an overtired brain began cooking up ideas that you were being followed and watched, it could be a sign that it was time to take things a bit easier. That's all it is, he thought to himself, taking a hand off the wheel to rub his chin. Foolish to imagine otherwise. The sudden dazzle of headlights behind him seemed to fill the interior of the Volkswagen. The priest's heart skipped a beat and then began to thump wildly as all the anxiety came instantly flooding back. He narrowed his eyes at the rearview mirror, trying to make out the shape of the lights. Was it the Mercedes again? The same Mercedes he'd been sure was tailing him yesterday on his way home from the church in Saint-Afrique, and the day before, and last Tuesday as well? He stared so long into the mirror that he almost missed the bend ahead and had to swerve to avoid the verge. "Damn this fog," he muttered. But he'd been driving these roads for over a third of a century and knew every inch of them. He'd soon see if he was being followed. Any second now. Wait for it. Yes. There it was. He swung the car hard right as the junction came up and accelerated as hard as he dared down the narrow lane that would take him the long way round towards Saint Christophe. He glanced back at the rearview mirror. Nothing. He felt the heart palpitations begin to subside. There. See? You're an idiot. Then the lights reappeared in his mirror, and his mouth went dry. He hung another sharp right, then a left, taking him deeper into the web of country lanes. The lights stayed right there in his mirror. Terrified to go any faster, Fabrice clenched the steering wheel tightly and willed the night to clear. The trees loomed out of the mist. Man and boy, he'd roamed in these woods, but now they seemed filled with a sinister life of their own, as if closing in on him, reaching out to grab him in their claws. He fumbled for his phone and dialed a familiar number. No reply. At the prompt to leave a message, he spoke urgently and breathlessly, his English faltering in his panic. "Simeon, it's me, Fabrice. The thing I told you about. I am sure it's happening again. Just now, tonight. I think someone is after me. Please, call me as soon as you can." The lights were still there, closer now, white and dazzling through the fog. Now what? Fabrice thought of calling Bernard, the local chief of police. He had his home number on his phone, but Bernard would be deep into a bottle by this time of night, if not passed out in front of the TV. Then Fabrice thought of his old friend Jacques Rabier, whose farm was just a kilometre away beyond the woods. Groaning in panic, he hit the gas. A heart-stopping series of blind crests and hairpin bends later, he slewed the car through Jacques' familiar rickety gate and went bumping wildly up the long track towards the farmhouse. The place was in darkness, shutters closed. Fabrice killed the engine and stumbled across the yard to thump on the front door. "Jacques!" he called out. No reply. A dog barked in the distance, and then Fabrice heard something else. The soft rumble of tyres coming up the track, and the sound of an engine that wasn't the clatter of Jacques Rabier's old Persian.